Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Commander video. In today's episode we're going to be going over a Commander I have gone out and built myself, Yargle and Multani. If you haven't seen this particular series before, what I'm going to be doing is going over a deck I've actually built myself. I sleeved up 100 cards, went out and played some Magic in the pub, and this is going to be the deck. It will still be in the same style as the other videos that I've done. I'm still going to be breaking things down in terms of like my ramp section, my card draw, my win cons, that kind of thing, but I'll be specifically giving a list of the deck I actually made. I will also put some budget options in the maybe board before the video goes out, just in case anyone wants to build this on a bit more of a budget. But let's jump over to Tap and I'll actually show you the list. So firstly, Yargle and Multani is 3 black, and a green for a 18/6 legendary creature Frog Spirit Elemental. And then it has some flavor text. You do not need abilities when your commander has 18 power. There are a ton of cool effects which care about the power of a creature that you control. Of all the commanders we've seen, this takes advantage of that so well, because it's just 6 mana for 18 power. That is absurd. With this deck, I really want to maximize just having that raw power available to me in the command zone. Also, as most people will be aware, you only need 21 points of commander damage to knock a player out of the game. So with Yargle being on 18 power, just starting off for 6 mana, we will have some effects to take advantage of that as well. So the way I have built this is to take advantage of the 18 power, mainly in the way of things like drawing cards or even ramp. There is definitely a more Voltron version of this deck where you just suit up Yargle and Multani and just go to town on your opponent's life totals. I found with this build you don't really need to do too much, you only need to get it up 3 points of power in order to kill an opponent. So I'll go over some of my choices for how I decided to do that when we actually get to those sections. So I think the best place to start is actually probably with a card draw, as it will kind of give you a good indication of what the deck is trying to do. We're trying to take advantage of that power with cards like Life's Legacy, Hunter's Insight, Disciple of Bolas, Greater Good, Momentous Fall, Shadowheart, Dark Justicer, Hunter's Prowess, Return of the Wild Speaker, Soul's Majesty, and Rishkar's Expertise. What these cards all do is basically draw us cards equal to the power of a creature that we control. Again, Yargle has 18 power. These all effectively say draw 18 cards. It is obscene. If you were building this yourself, I'd probably want between 8 to 10 bits here. I was quite greedy. I wanted to make the most of these sacrifice abilities. I wanted to see what the deck could do. I was not disappointed by running 10 of them. That's probably what I would go up to. I don't think you need any more because you do actually need other stuff to do. Yeah, if you're building this yourself, between 8 to 10 bits of these effects, I think is pretty spot on there. Some of them, like Life's Legacy, or Greater Good, or Disciple of Bolas, or Momentous Fall, these require you to sack the creature to draw the cards. That is fine. We have ways of getting around that in this deck. We're going to be running some reanimation, and we're going to be running some like undying effects to bring it back into play. So we can do it multiple times in a turn even, or we just do it once, get it back into play, and then we start attacking with it while having a full grip of 18 cards. It's really fun. So as that section is below, I'll actually go over it now. Basically, a large part of the protection is cards that bring Yargle and Multani back to the battlefield. If it's either been destroyed, maybe our opponent tries to kill it. It is a terrifying creature when it comes down to it, or if we've sacked it for value just to get it back into play. So for those effects, we have Kaya's Ghost Form, Malakir Rebirth, Undying Evil. These 3 effects are fantastic at 1, protecting Yargle and Multani, but 2, just letting us do the multiple card draw thing. It lets us really abuse cards like Greater Good, just drawing so many cards off it. Some other bits of protection in here, we have Vines of Vastwood. This basically gives your creature hexproof, or it can double up as a pump spell to make Yargle and Multani's power 22, so it takes out an opponent if it can get through for damage. That is fantastic. Heroic Intervention is just a very solid card in these decks. It's very good anti-board wipe tech, while also protecting from targeted removal. We have the more standard fare like Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. I was actually underwhelmed by Lightning Greaves. I probably wouldn't run this in the future, just because a lot of the time we're going to be wanting to target our creatures with our spells. So it giving Shroud is annoying. Like the haste part is good, but the Shroud is annoying. If you only end up with 1 creature in play, this really sucks. This actually happened to me in one of the games. I was kind of just stuck, not able to do anything because my creature had a Lightning Greaves on it. That was kind of annoying, so I probably would cut that for future ones. Swiftfoot Boots is obviously the similar thing. You have to pay 1 more to whip it, but it gives it hexproof, so we can still target it. We like that. And then Snake Umbra. I didn't go too ham with too many of the Umbras. Yeah, it's definitely the more Voltron version, I think, wants to run more of these. I was only running this one because it also drew me a card when it got hit while giving it a bit of protection. I think that one's actually worked out to be okay. To go along with the ways of getting it back into play, I was also running some reanimation. So Phyrexian Reclamation is a really solid card. I really love this card. It was in my first ever deck, actually. It's on the wall behind me there. It's just a repeatable way of bringing something back into play, mainly so you don't have to repay the command attacks with Yargle and Multani. It already costs 6. We don't want to be paying that too often. This just bringing it back to our hand means that we only really need 8 mana to play it and sacrifice it multiple times in a turn. We like that. Then for just some more standard reanimation, we have things like Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, the -2 of Liliana the Last Hope, and Necromancy, which is a bit of a spicy one, because it has the bottom ability that lets you bring it back into play with haste, so you can attack with it on the same turn. That one is actually quite nice. But there are definitely more budget versions of Necromancy and Dance of the Dead out there that you can look at. The other one I was running was Balaged Recovery, just again to return a permanent to my hand from the graveyard. This also doubles up as a land, obviously, which we like. I do get a bit greedy with these, as you might see when we go through the video. So with the combination of our Undying effects and our reanimation effects, we are able to sacrifice Yargle and Multani a ton of times, drawing so many cards with so much value. We do have a couple of ways of keeping those cards in our hand. We'll go through those sections a bit more later, but just to kind of flag, we are running Reliquary Tower, and we are running Thought Vessel in our ramp section. Normally, I would not run anywhere near this amount of protection or recursion in a deck, but because we are really trying to make the most of it, like we're basically using it as our engine to draw us a ton of cards while also protecting our commander, I do think it is worth going a little bit higher. The fact that cards like Vines of Vastwood and Snake Umbra double up as like win conditions and a bit of card draw, I do think gives them way more play. And the fact these recursion effects can bring back some of our bigger creatures, or even just for Reclamation, bringing back a couple of mana dorks after a board wipe is going to be pretty solid. So ramp is probably the best place to go over now. The base of the ramp, I've actually put on mana dorks, actually specifically elves, mainly so I could run Priest of Titania just to give you a bit more bang for your buck. There's a couple of very specific win conditions that meant I wanted a lot of small creatures in play, and having them on mana dorks I thought was really solid. We are also running Sol Ring. It's still a 6-mana commander. We do want to be able to get it out into play nice and early. Thought Vessel, obviously, as we've mentioned. Then I ran a couple of bigger ramp just to kind of reward us for, again, having that 18 power available to us. So we have Savala that taps to add mana equal to the greatest power. 18. This taps for 18 mana. We love that. We have Tanuki Transplanter, which again makes, when Yargle and Multani attacks, if it's equipped to it, it will make us 18 green mana. Again, fantastic. Transverse the Outlands. This is a house of a card. I wasn't actually running enough basics to fully take advantage of this. But basically, with Yargle and Multani in play, if you play Transverse the Outlands, you just go and get 18 basic lands and put them into play. Yes, they are tapped, but that combined with this large amount of card draw that we have, you're just playing so many spells. Like basically, that plus one of these, you're probably winning the game. It's fantastic. And then Old Gnawbone is a bit greedy. I don't think this one's truly necessary. I just wanted a bit more beef. I wanted like another big thing in there that I could sack if needed. But this one is just really solid in here because, again, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. Again, 18 damage. If this connects, we're making 18 treasure tokens, fueling us for the next couple of turns. It's really, really good. So my ramp section is definitely thicker than like would be in other decks. Because this is a 6-mana commander that ideally we're going to have some protection for because it will paint a target on itself. It's kind of a 7-mana commander, so to get to that point I wanted to run a bit more mana. And again, because these will turn into win conditions, which we'll get onto in a moment with the mana dorks, I was kind of alright having more of them in the deck. And then just having these ones that make you so much mana, kind of like these 10 are kind of like our base, like the Arbor Elf down to Thought Vessel is kind of our base. Then the ones on top are just kind of the super push you over the edge, you're about to win the game. If you can get their effect off with Yargle and Multani out, like that's kind of like an extra win condition rather than just straight ramp. We'll quickly touch on our interaction section. This is again pretty standard fare, most of this. Things like Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, Maelstrom Pulse, Toxic Deluge. Like you really can run what you want in this section. Like there's plenty of budget options to replace things like Snuff Out and Deadly Rollick. Couple of ones I thought were quite cool. Carnally Ambush is a fight spell, which flips into a land, again, because I was being a bit greedy with the mana base with this. Just, again, being able to fight something. 18 power will definitely kill something when it needs to. The 6 toughness might make it a bit more tricky, but again, we have some pump spells that can kind of buff it up a bit just to make that a bit more one-sided. And then you look upon the Tarask, I thought was quite interesting. This doubles up as a bit of protection. We're mainly playing it for that bottom ability, the ability to give a creature +5/+5 and give it indestructible until end of turn. We like that buffs it up, plus the commander damage threshold to get through, and also just the making all of our opponents block Yargle and Multani. That's effectively a board wipe. It's going to, like, Yargle and Multani will have indestructible. We're dealing, 23 points of damage across their whole board? That could just be a one-sided wrath, basically. That I think is quite nice and is probably worth the 5 mana, and it is also a nice cheap card to kind of get in there, so we do like that. So next up, let's go over our buff effects. This is kind of a bit of a weird section to describe, but basically, if you were going more Voltron, this would be your Voltron effect section, but because I want to be sacrificing Yargle and Multani quite a bit, I didn't really go with things like equipment or like as many auras as I probably could have. I was basically looking for one-time super efficient effects, or effects I could use again and again. So for our efficient effects, we have things like Giant Growth. Tainted Strike, definitely also a win condition. I did kill some people with this. The fact that this is free is fantastic. Yes, you're giving an opponent 3 life, but their life total doesn't actually matter. You just need to deal them 21 points of damage. It doesn't matter if they're on 1,000,000 life. When you hit that 21 points of damage, they will still lose from commander damage. We love all that. And then for the more repeatable bits of like buffing up the creature, we have things like Rancor. If this is on Yargle and Multani, when it goes to the graveyard, it just returns to our hand so we can play it again. Same with Demonic Embrace, we can cast this from the graveyard. Same with Fallen Idol. You do need to sacrifice a creature to get the buff on it, but you can do that multiple times in a turn, which is quite nice. And just giving Yargle and Multani naturally flying, I think is fantastic. Garruk the Unleashed, again, just giving that +3/+3 and trample means that it can deal that 21 damage in one hit. We like that. And also the -2 can just give you the board wipe you need just to stabilize. That did come in handy yesterday. Goreclaw makes Yargle and Multani a bit easier to cast. There is a new Goreclaw that could also probably go in this deck as well, but I don't own one yet. But this repeatedly giving it +1/+1 and trample as well is very nice. The one aura that I kind of gave in on and put in is Indomitable Might. It's 3 and a green for a flash enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and it may deal its damage as though it wasn't blocked. So this plus Yargle and Multani basically kill someone. It doesn't matter what blockers they put in front of it. We can assign 21 points of damage as if it wasn't blocked. That's a win condition. That completely kills an opponent. Again, I won a game with this yesterday. It's a fantastic card. It is worth it being on a enchantment that we only get to use once, because realistically we only need to use it once. Like, yes, it will fall off if we then sacrifice it to one of these card draw effects, but realistically we're only going to be doing it at the final moment when we need to kill someone. It's a very, very solid card. I was very impressed by this. In terms of numbers here, I was quite happy with these. I think between 8 to 10. If you were going full Voltron with this and you weren't doing as much of this kind of cool card draw stuff that I was really leaning into, I think you maybe would want to go a bit higher here. I would also probably run more of the Umbra effects just to give you that bit of protection while also buffing up Yargle and Multani stats. But with the way I was building Yargle and Multani, more of the sacrificey, take advantage of the power side of things, I was actually quite happy with these. There are probably more efficient bits out here, but nothing in here is super expensive, so I was actually quite happy with that. Right, so we've got our engine, we've got our card draw effects, we've got our ways of protecting, we've got our ways of bringing it back again and again. We've got our ramp to actually let us cast our spells. If we can get one of these big ones off, we can be doing multiple of these buff effects a turn. Let's go over to our win cons now. So a couple of cool cards out here. We do have the potential to make a ton of mana in this deck. I know Exsanguinate isn't the sexiest of kind of win conditions, but transverse the outlands, get 18 lands, put them into play, Exsanguinate out the table. It will win games. I do think that's quite good. Invasion of Ikoria. This was actually quite solid. This could be replaced by any other kind of green tutor, but I just opened this card and I wanted to give it a go. Also, the backside does a similar thing to Indomitable Might, which is quite nice. Invasion of Ikoria is in here basically to go and get Pathbreaker Ibex. This is a fantastic card, especially in this deck. Basically, Pathbreaker Ibex is a 6 mana 3/3. Ooh, it's a goat. Awesome, love that. When it attacks, creatures you control gain trample, importantly, and get +X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So if we have Yargle out, all of our team gets +18/+18. That does also include Yargle and Multani itself. So that with trample will probably be killing a player. This plus Yargle and Multani and a number of these mana dorks will just take out a game. Pathbreaker Ibex is insane in this deck. A similar version of this in Overwhelming Stampede. This basically does the same thing, but you kind of one-shot it. Again, really solid. Both Overwhelming Stampede and Pathbreaker Ibex just won me games yesterday. They was really, really good. I think these are some of the best win conditions in this deck. Some more kind of standard fare. So we have Triumph of the Hordes. Again, because we have these tokens, we might as well go a bit wide with them. And also, Triumph of the Hordes, just giving Yargle and Multani +1/+1, trample and infect. Again, that will just take out a player, same way as Tainted Strike if it can connect. Basically, someone is dying. Jarad, again, we can fling Yargle and Multani if we need to. We can buy it back. We can use one of these to get it back. Do it multiple times in a turn, just drain out the whole board. That could be pretty good. Rite of Consumption is a one-time version of that effect. Again, I think this one didn't come up because I was actually killing people just with the combat damage of Overwhelming Stampede and Pathbreaker Ibex. But I could definitely see a world where kind of this is just a really nice way of just one-shotting someone for 18 damage, you gain 18 life, that can reset you, that can buy you a bit of time to bring it back into play with an Animate Dead or a Dance of the Dead, something like that, and then you just go to town again. I think that's quite good. Tribute to the World Tree is a bit of a weird one. I wasn't entirely sure where to put it, because it does card draw, but it also buffs up our mana dorks and makes them into beaters as well. We like all of that fact. I think the triple green may have meant it was a little bit greedy in this deck, but I was impressed by it. I did think it was quite good. So we'll quickly round off with some utility lands. I wasn't actually running as many as I thought I was. I was running crop rotation and expedition map as ways of getting some of these lands out. Primarily, if I'm honest, to go and get something like Reliquary Tower. Just having more of these so we can keep the cards in our hand is just going to be really important. Command Beacon is good in any deck that revolves around having your commander in play. We're only 2 colors, so it doesn't affect the mana base too much. Just having this to reset the command attacks one turn is going to be really nice. Tomb Fortress is just a nice bit of recursion. I do like this card. I really love a lot of the Warhammer 40k cards, so I kind of will use any excuse to play them. And then Shizo Death Storehouse is just, it's basically free to run. It comes into play, it taps for a black, doesn't come into play tapped, fantastic. And then it can give Yargle and Multani fear. It's just a possible way of getting it through for damage. And yeah, it's basically free to run. Like, there are definitely more budget versions of this, like Rogue's Passage, that could easily be in here as well as instead of this. But yeah, really solid card. The rest of the mana base is up here. I do think this is potentially a little low. My thinking was that because I have all these 1 mana dorks in here, I can be a bit greedy. So it's effectively 32 lands, which is very low, but I do have 3 of the flip lands in here as well, so that does make it a little bit higher. I didn't get too screwed on mana when I was playing, but I could definitely see going up to like 36 in total with these on top, just to kind of make it a little bit more consistent. So that's the overview of the deck. Let's go over how the games actually went. So I played 4 games with this yesterday. I won 3 and lost 1. We'll go over the one I lost first, because I think that will kind of like explain my thinking of definitely adding more lands. Basically, this deck really revolves around Yargle and Multani. You need to get to 6 mana to get it out as quickly as possible. I think potentially if I'd mulliganed a bit better, I probably could have got there. That's definitely something I will take away from this. I think possibly cutting Old Gnawbone, if I'm honest with you, just for another land, and then maybe some other big spell. I like you Look Upon the Terrace, but again, it's a 5-mana spell that's a bit cute. Maybe this and this should have just been lands. They're going to give me that bit more consistency. That's probably what I should have done in hindsight. And basically in that game, I was just a little bit too slow. I didn't have time to get Yargle and Multani out and do anything cool with it. By the time I got Yargle and Multani out, I didn't have time to do any of the cool card draw stuff, didn't have any time to do any of the big ramp stuff. I was effectively dead at that point, so that kind of sucked a little bit. But the 3 games I won, oh my god, how I won them. When this deck gets ticking, it is a ton of fun. Like honestly, getting some ramp out, going Yargle and Multani into one of these card draw effects with a Kaya's Ghost Form or an Undying Evil effect up is phenomenal. You just have so many resources available, and also an 18/6 commander. It's really, really good. The 2 standout cards in the games I've won were Overwhelming Stampede and Pathbreaker Ibex. If you see one of these with any kind of board state and Yargle and Multani, you're basically winning the game on that spot. Like, the way to tune this deck up is to probably run a couple more bits of tutors, specifically to go and get these cards. The fact you have to untap with Pathbreaker Ibex, because it doesn't naturally have haste, is definitely a downside. Like, your opponents will see it coming. They are all about to die. All of your opponents will be trying to kill it. But again, you do have the protection with these effects as well. Like, Vines of Warsword basically giving it hexproof is quite nice. But if you can untap with it, it will kill things. Maybe that is the reason why Lightning Greaves maybe should stay in, but I'm still not a massive fan of it. There's probably other ways of giving it haste in these colours, maybe some other bits of equipment that we can look to run instead. But on turn 6 of the game, I killed 2 players, with the only things in play was an Elves of Deep Shadow and a Yargle and Multani. So I'd ramped them out on turn 5. On turn 6, I attacked. Overwhelming Stampeded. Yargle and Multani got the +18/+18 in trample. That swung over and killed 1 opponent. Then I cast Tainted Strike on the Elves of Deep Shadow, because that was a 19/19 with trample and infect, and that killed the other player. On turn 6, in most metas, that is still very scary. The second game did go a bit longer, but the way I basically won that was just cast Yargle and Multani, then the next turn cast Transverse the Outlands. Just dumping so many lands into play is just obscene. Then you can follow it up with basically anything. Like, you can cast so much of your deck once you have cast Transverse the Outlands with Yargle or Multani out. You get so many lands out, it's fantastic. Yeah, I think from that point, I then sacrificed Yargle and Multani to a greater good, drew a bunch of cards, managed to draw an Animate Dead, bring Yargle and Multani back, and then we're just where we want to be. We have our massive commander, we have all the cards in hand, we have more mana than God. It is phenomenal. It's such a hard place to kind of like throw the game away from at that point. I think the third game went pretty similar to the first one in terms of get Yargle and Multani out, Overwhelming Stampede with a bit of a board state. But I think Indomitable Might came in handy here because one of my opponents was on an obscene amount of life. Abdominal Mike just guaranteeing the 21 points of commander damage just means that everything else can go at the other opponents. Just having one of these effects, being able to take out one opponent with one creature is really nice, because it just means the rest of your board can just rumble in and take out the other opponents. It just makes the combat math just that little bit nicer, because like, okay, this plus Yargle and Multani equals one player dead. One of these effects plus these effects makes other players dead, so we did like that. Some other cards I want to shout out just because of how good they did. People do not expect pump spells and protection spells anywhere near as much in Commander as you do in Limited. Vines of Vastward definitely won me a game. Being able to protect my Pathbreaker Ibex on the key turn when it was attacking, or when it was about to attack, was vital. It's a phenomenal card. The other cards I think are very good. Obviously, Snuff Out, unfortunately, has got way more expensive. Give this card a reprint. But the other one that was just free and good in this deck is Invigorate. Again, just this is like, what, 16 cents it's saying here? Just a free spell that can buff up your commander out of nowhere. Like, you can be untapped. You can swing in with Yargle and Multani. I was like, okay, it's 18 damage. That's a lot, but it's not 21, importantly. Then you cast this, it's fine. Well, for them, it's not fine. For you, it's phenomenal, because you've just killed someone out of nowhere without having any mana untapped. It's really, really solid. I did quite like those cards. I think they were definitely worth shouting out. But in terms of changes and upgrades, obviously in terms of just raw upgrades, raw power level, just some more tutors. I'm not a massive fan. The only one I was running, I think, is Invasion of Ikoria. Oh, and some land tutors. I don't really run that many tutors in Command anymore. I would rather run cool stuff like this and draw a bunch of cards. But again, for more powerful groups, definitely more tutors in there just to give you that more consistency. Also, certain play groups might be running more targeted removal, that kind of thing. I personally think I had a decent amount of protection in here. This stuff, especially being a lot of it being instant speed, is really nice. There is definitely a world where you have this deck together for a while and people just start killing Yargle and Multani on site. That's kind of why I said that, yes, it is technically a 6-drop, but it's also secretly a 7-drop, because in a perfect world, you want to be casting this with Undying Evil in your hand or Vines of Vast, which is just a way of giving it that bit of protection so you can untap with it and then you can swing with it. Because while Greater Good can just sit there in play beforehand, all the rest of these really need it to be in play. Like things like Hunter's Prowess and Return of the Wild Speaker, you need your creature in play when you cast these. If Yargle and Multani dies, you might just be spending 5 mana to draw like, oh great, I draw 1 card because of my Arbor Elf. Fantastic. Like, no, you want the protection up. You want ways to protect it. I could see the longer you play this deck, it could just get hated out. In terms of just raw upgrades that I was thinking of, because you draw so many cards in this deck, you could be a little bit cheeky and put Chain of Smog and Witherbloom Apprentice in. Basically, this is just a 2-card combo. You have Witherbloom Apprentice in play, you cast Chain of Smog, you can keep targeting yourself, even when you don't have cards in hand, to keep escalating it, and then this drains everyone out. Because you draw so many cards in this deck, and because you also have quite a lot of mana, this 2-card combo is not that hard to get down, if I'm honest with you. I think that could be a very good way of powering it up in a more powerful meta. Tend the Pest is an interesting one. I do like the way that this could sacrifice it and give you the board state to then Pathbreaker Ibex or Overwhelming Stampede. Like, to be fair, if someone kills your commander, if someone kills Yargle and Multani, we sack it to Tend the Pest in response. If we have Overwhelming Stampede, we can just, like, invigorate up anything, make that bigger, then cast Overwhelming Stampede, give our board of 18 pests +5/+5. That is a pretty solid backup win condition. That could be a good way of winning the game. Similarly with Life Death, so, oh god. So the death part of this is just a reanimation spell. That's perfectly solid. The deck wants to be running those anyway. All lands you control becoming 1/1s. Again, just with the Overwhelming Stampede and the Pathbreaker Ibex is a good bit of utility. You are probably going to be doing the death side more, but the life side I do think could come in handy and could be a pretty solid win condition. Essence Harvest is just another version of Rite of Consumption. For 1 more mana, you don't have to sacrifice the creature. You don't get... Oh, you do gain the life. So actually, if I owned one and my printer hadn't run out of black ink, I probably would have replaced Rite of Consumption with Essence Harvest. It does the same thing, but means you don't have to sack it. That probably is a little bit better. Right, I think I'm going to leave it there. There will obviously be a link to this tapped out down in the description below. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Let me know what changes you would make. Let me know what you liked about it. I really enjoyed this deck. I'm probably going to be keeping it around for a little bit. I am trying to be good and build new Commander decks every time I play Commander, that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed this Commander. Just having those raw stats, just 18-6 is phenomenal. There's so much cool stuff that you can do with it. I really enjoyed myself. I had a fantastic time with this deck. And I hope people out there do too. It was a ton of fun and I really liked it. But until next time, please like, share, and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.